For the last hour, Sergeant 𝚁𝙗 of the Salamanders and his brothers had fought the most recent orc assaults in the levels just underneath the Hive's gate. Supported by guard regiments and the Hive militia, every assault was repulsed. But not this one. Orc commandos had opened several breaches in the walls of the Hive, letting tens of thousands of orcs pour in.
Fall back, brothers! We can no longer hold this position!
Cried 𝚁𝙗 on the Vox.
Brother 𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃𝙸𝙾𝙽, make sure the guardsmen are evacuated, and meet us at these coordinates! Go now!
The Salamander acquiesced and sprinted towards the nearest guard position.
Advanced post DL421 Gamma.
Sweat was pouring freely on Sergeant Greely's face when he received the order to withdraw. But the auxiliary does not retreat, he thought to himself. However, in this situation it might not be such a bad idea. Corporal Muldoon, gather the men and fall back to the designated coordinates. It took barely a minute before the auxiliary positions were disengaging the orcs in a well-coordinated manner. Booby traps were laid at key junctions where the orcs were certain to take. Walkways were weakened so that they would fail and send the orcs plunging to the depths below. Doors were primed with crack and shrapnel charges to detonate the moment they were opened. Greely was feeling spirited the more he got away from the orcs. Something crashed through the ceiling, breaking his reverie and filling the surroundings with dust and smoke. Greely looked around, trying to determine what had fallen through the ceiling. Sighting down his las rifle, a large shape appeared in the gloom. As the dust disappeared, it was clear that the shape was that of a space marine, the Emperor's Angels of Death. As he approached it, he realized that its armor was yellow. Emperor be praised. The Imperial Fists are here! As he stopped near the Marine, he threw a sharp salute. My lord, we are glad to see you. What would you have us do? Suddenly, the Marine grabbed Greely by the throat, squeezing hard.
You have dared to leave your positions in the face of Xenos. You have betrayed the Emperor with your cowardice.
The Marine snarled, throwing Greely to the floor. Now he saw it clearly. The Marine was not an Imperial Fist. Malevolent, he cried. We were ordered to fall back by the suck. Greely's last words were a slur as his head fell from his shoulders. The Malevolent gestured to his emerging battle brothers.
This is Captain Vinyar. Kill them all. They are not worthy of life.
1.5 miles from DL421 Gamma.
𝚁𝙗 wrenched his thunderhammer free of an orc champion's smoking skull when his helmet communicator crackled to life.
Brother Sergeant, we have a situation here! What is it, Brother 𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃𝙸𝙾𝙽?
Responded 𝚁𝙗 as he shot a charging orc in the face with his bolt pistol.
We have received Marine reinforcements. And
snarled 𝚁𝙗 as he parried a huge cleaver.
They are killing any guardsmen who are falling back, as per your orders. Who are they?
𝚁𝙗 asked, his voice dry.
Marines Malevolent, Sergeant. Squad Prometheus, with me. Squads Nocturne and Deathfire remain here to keep the Greenskins at bay.
After receiving those squads' affirmations, 𝚁𝙗 and his squad sprinted towards the last known guard position. As he ran, 𝚁𝙗 could see his brothers fighting side by side with the unaugmented humans. This brought pride to his heart. Why can't the Malevolents understand that concept? It is all so clear. It only took a few minutes for him to reach the location of the last guard transmission. He skidded to a halt, staring at a dread figure in yellow armor. The figure held a headless corpse, which he discarded as though it was nothing more than a dirty carpet.
Greetings, brother,
the figure said,
Will you join us in teaching these men a lesson in loyalty?
𝚁𝙗 only stared at him, his collar rising.
How dare you? I gave these men orders to fall back to better positions.
The Marine Malevolent took his helmet off, revealing a face scarred by decades of brutal warfare. His thin smile held no kindness of any sort. Retreat is cowardice. These guardsmen renounced their title of men the moment they took a step back. Anyone who retreats in the face of humanity's enemies is a traitor, deserving only of death. His patience spent, 𝚁𝙗 stomped towards the Marine, intent on violence. When he was arm's length from the Superman, the gate's foundations shuddered. The ground started to fracture. Soon, the entire room started to break, oblivion expanding under their feet. 𝚁𝙗, his squad, and the Marines Malevolent were engulfed by the darkness before anyone could send a distress signal. 𝚁𝙗 shoved aside pieces of masonry as he looked around. Darkness was everywhere, though he could sense both his squad and the Marines Malevolent that had fallen with him.
Squad Deathfire, do you read me? Squad Nocturne, no response.
As he took in his surroundings, 𝚁𝙗 spotted a blotch of light in the distance.
There is where we must go,
𝚁𝙗 told his squad. For the other Astartes, he merely gestured to follow. Reaching the source of the light, however, took longer than 𝚁𝙗 had expected. The two squads entered through what seemed to be an old gate. A very old gate. He could see the outlines of sculptures that had been rendered formless by the passage of time. A faint sound emanated from the other side. It soon turned into a chant the moment the Astartes crossed the threshold. The space reminded 𝚁𝙗 of the great cathedrals, so prized by the followers of the Imperial Creed. Surprisingly, the space was far from empty. Several hundred civilians, in various stages of sickness, were on their knees. Droning prayers 𝚁𝙗 had difficulty understanding. It was only when he and his disparate squad reached the altar that it all seemed clear. This was no ecclesiarchy-sanctioned shrine to the Emperor, but something else entirely. 𝚁𝙗 could see a long pulpit, not unlike those usually found in Imperial sanctuaries. Instead of the face of the Emperor or one of his saints, there was a leering demonic face, which seemed to both mock and pity those who looked upon it. Just above the face were 3 skulls, each one circled by a ring of rusted iron. Small, green tentacles gently swayed in the underground breeze. One of the skulls suppurated a vicious bile that slowly ate through the pulpit. Turning around, he could see the state of the worshippers. Most of them were in various states of decomposition, although none of them were dead. Boils, lesions, and necrotic cysts were almost on all of them. All the while, rats, worms, and other vermin slithered on their pale flesh or beneath their legs. 𝚁𝙗 was just about to order his squad to open fire on these heretical degenerates, when a loud, though almost friendly voice boomed from behind the altar.
Esteemed guests, greetings. We were just about ready to start the ceremony. You are more than welcome to participate.
𝚁𝙗 was taken aback. The being wasn't some degenerate human ministering to his diseased flock. This was a full-fledged plague marine. Its bloated body seemed to be barely contained within its rusty armor. However, 𝚁𝙗 knew that this was just an illusion.
Who are you, abomination?
Vinyar growled, his fingers grasping his power sword in mute fury. The pestilent being smiled as he picked a sickly rat off the floor and bit its head off. It took a step towards 𝚁𝙗 and the Astartes.
You've been fighting for so long, and with such Tenacity. You should be commended. Nay, worshipped for your deeds. Even your Emperor should bow down to you. Come, rest. Embrace the atrophy that is your reward.
Unable to restrain himself any longer, Vinyar suddenly threw himself at the figure.
You will not corrupt us, monster. We have but one master, the Emperor, and he will cast down your false god.
Before Vinyar could come close enough to strike the creature with his sword, the Plague Marine simply moved his hand and snapped his fingers. The Malevolent was thrown back into a wall, cracking it. He sighed heavily.
I don't like malevolence. They are all so angry all the time. Not like you, Salamander. You fight for righteousness, for the people.
The figure stepped away from the altar, coming ever closer to Vereth and his brothers. He gestured at the kneeling civilians.
Where was the Emperor when these poor wretches prayed for liberation, Where was he when the cursed greenskins defiled the soil of their world? What did he do in his eternal wisdom? He sent them.
The figure now pointed a long, curved finger at the unconscious Vinyar and the trio of Malevolents standing around his prone form. Opening his arms, he took another step.
Open your eyes, brother. You fight for a lost cause. The Emperor doesn't care about you. Men like him
He pointed to Vinyar again.
don't care about the common people, or even the soldiers tasked to protect them. They speak of glory, but it is only a glory steeped in the blood of the innocents, and built upon the bones of the righteous and the strong.
Vereth pointed his hammer face down at the Marine before he could get too close.
Before you continue, traitor, identify yourself. I would hate to have to kill someone who's nameless.
The thing smiled again. Were Vereth a normal man, he would have retched uncontrollably.
Now then, where are my manners? Let me introduce myself. I am 𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃𝙸𝙾𝙃, first Cardinal of the Church of the Harmonious Growth. At your service.
Surely you cannot let this traitor live. We must...
Started one of the Salamanders, the pilot light on his flamer burning brighter. Vereth stopped him with his raised hand.
Come now, my brother. We wouldn't want to be rude to His Holiness now, would we? We will let him finish his diatribe, and then we will finish this.
𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃 opened his arms in a gesture of false obfuscation.
Your words pain me, Salamander. All I want is for you to see the truth of the universe. The Imperium is dying. A slow demise for sure, but a demise all the same.
All your words are nothing but poisonous lies,
Snarled Vinyar as he got back on his feet. 𝚁𝙃 sighed again. His voice rose up in pitch, although it remained soft. Vereth could clearly see that the Plague Marine's patience was almost gone.
It pains me to see that there will be no hope of salvation for you, brothers. There is only one thing I can do for you. Slay you in this holy place, and give your souls to Grandfather Nurgle for purification.
In one quick movement, 𝚁𝙃 took his sword from his scabbard. It was a long blade whose barbs oozed a sickly green slime. They ate into the floor as they dripped from the blade's edge. Vereth saluted with his thunder hammer and started pacing around the Chaos Champion. Brother Shengozi's voice crackled in his helmet.
What shall we do with these civilians?
Vereth looked back at the assembled multitudes. Some had armed themselves with hand weapons and small caliber pistols. Nothing that could endanger the armor of the Salamanders or the Malevolents.
Kill any that comes close,
was his response. 𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃𝙸𝙾𝙽 had barely stopped talking when 𝚁𝙴𝙗 was already barreling down on him, sword high. The sword barely missed decapitating him, destroying one of the pews nearby. The wood splinters rotting to nothingness before they even touched the ground. 𝚁𝙴𝙳𝙃 swung his mighty hammer, targeting 𝚁𝙗's swollen legs. The Plague Marine soared much higher than 𝚁𝙃 thought possible for a being that bloated. He was barely able to get out of the way before the Marine crashed onto the floor, causing 𝚁𝙃 to stagger. He had barely found his balance again when 𝚁𝙗 came at him, sword held high. He lifted his hammer in a defensive stance, only his superhuman strength keeping 𝚁𝙗's great sword strikes at bay. Suddenly, 𝚁𝙗 lifted his plague sword above his head, as though to give the killing blow. While he was able to get out of the way, the sword blow caused the floor's rotten wood to give way. 𝚁𝙃 fell into the darkness. As he raised himself up, 𝚁𝙃 scanned his surroundings and realized he was standing in a crypt. Turning around, 𝚁𝙃 realized that he was standing on a large stone sarcophagus, whose stone lid had shattered by the impact. Hearing the continuing battle above him, 𝚁𝙃 picked himself up and started the long climb to his squad. As he moved across the broken sarcophagus lid, something caught his eye. He looked closer at the desiccated corpse inside. Around its now skeletal neck, 𝚁𝙃 took out what looked like a thin glass tube. It still held a liquid of some sort. There was a message written on old parchment just underneath it. Most of the words were dulled with age, but he was still able to make out the important ones. To the blessed memory of Pilgrim Brother Hengest of Armageddon, went to his eternal reward at the God's Emperor's side, in the 457th year of M41. May the thrice blessed water of the grand honorificum of benediction bring you holiness and peace. Taking the vial of the liquid, 𝚁𝙃 smiled under his helmet.
Now this will be of great help.